From industrial to infrastructure projects, the Project Definition Rating Index, or PDRI, is a powerful, easy-to-use tool that enables project teams to identify the project risk factors related to desired outcomes for cost, schedule, and operating performance. This presentation defines the new improved PDRI Maturity and Accuracy Total Rating System, or PDRI MATRS, which allows you to more accurately understand the maturity and accuracy of front-end planning, potentially leading to improvements of cost performance by as much as 24%. Here to share with you their findings, please welcome Eric Ochsner and G. Edward Gibson.
Good morning. So what if you could save 24% on your cost performance on your large, complex industrial projects by having a more mature and accurate project definition plan during the front-end planning phase? That's the proposition that we're going to talk to you about this morning. So let me give you a little bit of background, and I said maturity and accuracy. So we'll go into some detail about that. So what is maturity? I think most of us can relate to this. As parents, we try to get our children to be mature physically, mentally, and emotionally so that as they go into their adult life, they can be contributing members of society. It's a hard job. We define maturity of a front-end plan as the completeness of those things that we should be doing during that front-end planning process to have a good project definition package. It's not an easy job. We also know that the environment makes a big difference, as with raising children or the environment that we see for our project teams. This is a really pretty location. We put our team in an environment like this. It still has challenges, as an analogy. We have water to cross, mountains to climb, we have headwinds, the weather changes. But we put them into an environment that's enjoyable but challenging. This is the environment that we put many of our teams in as they develop the front-end plan. Not a very good environment to be in, and one in which many times all the team does is try to survive. They batten down the hatches. We describe accuracy as the degree of confidence that we have in the developed maturity as things move forward. So we're going to talk to you about maturity and accuracy as we move through the process here. One of our themes today is choice, and we have choices in life, but we also have choices in projects. One of our choices, singular, is do we commit ourselves to having a mature and accurate front-end plan? And then there's choices, plural, because as you well know, and we've heard over the last 2 days, as we go through this front-end planning process, we have thousands and thousands of choices that we have to make. Winston Churchill said once, if we fail to plan, we plan to fail. I would amend that a little bit and say, if we fail to have a mature and accurate plan, then we plan to fail. So let me talk a little bit about the process. I'm here representing Research Team 361. Research Team 361 has met over the last year. And my name is Ed Gibson. I'm a faculty member at Arizona State University, a professor. I've been involved in CII research since 1988. I started when I was 12. It's been a fun ride. And I've been involved in developing all 5 of the widely used PDRI tools that have been validated. And I've also trained, and I've run across many people in here that I've trained in how to use the PDRI over the years. So here's the rest of our team. Nice mixture of owners and contractors. Many of these are holdovers from Team 331, which presented in Orlando 2 years ago. Some of you were there. And we talked about front-end engineering design, maturity and total rating system, or FEED MATRS at that time. Some of the people on the team actually have been involved in development of PDRIs for almost or over 2 decades. So it was a good team. Our charter was pretty simple. It was to take the PDRI for industrial projects version 4.0, which was originally developed in 1996 and has gone through a series of upgrades over the years, along with its associated spreadsheet, and take the work that was done on front-end engineering design, maturity and accuracy total rating systems 2 years ago, and its spreadsheet, and just combine those into one document, PDRI 5.0. Sounds pretty simple. It turned out to be a heck of a lot of work. And we also developed, as an aside, its spreadsheet that's there with it and shown. One of the things I would say is that the nice part is, if you go to the CII web page, you can download both of these documents right now. They've been published. So a little bit of background, a little bit of starting point is the front-end planning process, the phase-gated process that we see here. And if you look at that phase-gated process, it goes through a series of stages, and you've seen this in a few presentations here. The PDRI and FEED take place during that front-end planning process. And the idea is that we get to the point where we have a good final investment decision. By show of hands, how many of you have actually have this process within your organization and you use it? Okay. Looking behind that column back there. Hey, guys. Good to see you back there. So yeah, we've seen this a long time. It's been proven over the last 28 years through CII work. I think the Colonel Spaulding yesterday said we have to have proof. 1,300 projects, $125 billion worth of projects, evaluation of 400 plus companies, and so on and so forth. The process works in preparing a project to be successful. It's not the only thing, certainly, but it works pretty effectively. So this is FEED. A lot of people use this word FEED. We came up with this definition a couple of years ago and we presented it. And as we look at the project definition package that we're trying to produce for a large, complex industrial project, you'll see some of the things that are listed here. FEED both informs and is informed by these other documents. And so what we're doing with PDRI Matters today and talking to you about is how do we tell if this is mature, and how do we try to ensure that we have an accurate set of criteria or environment for making this happen. As part of our work, we started with 46 FEED elements that had very detailed descriptions that we presented 2 years ago in Orlando. And we wanted to set the stage for combining it with the PDRI. The PDRI for industrial projects has 70 elements. And so part of the work of Research Team 361 was to replicate what we had done with the 46 elements with those additional 24 elements. And we did that, and that allowed us then to combine the two so that we get the benefits of both. This is an example of but one of the 24 elements that make up this tool that we developed as part of Research Team 361. So a lot of you have experience using PDRI over the years, and what I'll point out to you is that all the material in the upper left-hand column is from the original or classic PDRI view. Everything else on this sheet is new. This is the element affordability feasibility, one of several business driver elements that make up the PDRI, and then the others of the 24 were project management drivers. As part of what we did, we actually went back and looked at all of the PDRI elements from 1996 and up to this date, and we provided comments and we provided additional terminology because the terminology's changed in our industry, and that's shown there. And we also developed a new way of rating different elements. We talked about this 2 years ago on FEED MATRS. This is new, and it allows you now more objectively to evaluate where you are in terms of each element. We evaluate each element of the 70. There's an underlying scoring mechanism, and then as part of that scoring mechanism, it rolls up into a PDRI score. If you've been around PDRIs, you know 200 is kind of a number that we look for. The lower score is better. And so we did that, and that allowed us then to build this tool. We also combined in what we consider the accuracy factors, those environmental factors that we need to look at to make sure that our team is in place. We did this back in the 90s. It was called the alignment thermometer. That's been rolled up in here. And so these 27 factors really allow you to understand what kind of stresses you're putting on your team so that they can provide a better front-end plan. Here's an example of one of them. There are 27 total. You'll see that this one is 4C as a factor, and it's dealing with, do we have local knowledge, and can we get access to the site? And certainly if we have neither one of those, in many cases that will cause us to have a less than accurate front-end plan. As I said, there's 26 more of these. We heard a number of these over the last couple of days. Turnover on the team. Do we have our stakeholders in place? Do we have construction knowledge in the front-end plan? Have we been given enough time? Have we given enough resources, and so on and so forth? You evaluate each one of these factors using this scale. That rolls up into an overarching score of 0 to 100, and that tells you relatively how accurate of an environment you have. It's a proxy as we go forward. One of the things that we feel like the PDRI now is in a better position with is we actually provide more clarity. You may recall seeing this diagram a couple of years ago. We've got 3 circles here. We've got a 2-dimensional drawing. When we add that additional dimension or perspective, suddenly things become a lot clearer. That's really what we see with the work that we've done, adding both accuracy and maturity together on our projects. So you said 24%. Real quickly, where did you get that? We did this assessment a couple of years ago, 33 projects worth about almost $9 billion. We were able to measure at that time both maturity, which is on the y-axis, and accuracy on the x-axis. We were able to plot all of these projects. We set thresholds of 80% on maturity and 76% on accuracy, and that's pretty neat. What we found are that those projects in the lower left quadrant, low maturity, low accuracy, are on average 22% above the targeted budget at the end of construction. That's not a very good result. The targeted budget that's set at the final investment decision on average. We did better with high maturity, low accuracy, 6% above budget. Still not exactly where we'd like to be, but we did better. But then when we combined maturity and accuracy, we came in at 2% below our final investment decision baseline budget. So pretty good results, statistically significant for these. About 31 companies provided these projects, and they're all heavy industrial, complex projects. As part of our effort with 361, the current effort, we actually took the 24 elements that we had developed with PDRI. We went back to the companies who had participated in the original survey. We were able to collect, not all of them, but some of them, the additional information on PDRI, so we were able to come up with a PDRI score. Those in the low maturity, low accuracy were around 324 points on average. High maturity, low accuracy, around 210. Remember, we're looking for around 200. And then we also had 165. This gave us some confidence that what we had done really ties into how the classic PDRI has worked over time. And that gives us the idea that you can certainly take this tool and use it if you've been using PDRI 4.0 over the last few years. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. So I'm going to pass this over to Eric. Eric is Director of Engineering at the Building Products Division of Georgia Pacific and has about 20 years of experience. And he was really one of the key people in developing the spreadsheet. So I'll pass it over to Eric.
Thanks, Ed. Some of that, appreciate the intro. Some of that was even true. So I want to talk a little bit about the tool. So as Ed mentioned, the tool is a hybrid between the classic PDRI and the FEED MATRS tool that was developed a couple years ago. So anybody who's had any experience with either one of those tools should find this very familiar to use and easy to adopt. It's also been beta tested by a number of the team members, so it's validated, it's tested, it's ready to use right now, and it can be downloaded from the CII website. You'll find that the tool greatly expands on the number of options available to the users, both in the evaluations that are done and the types of applications for the tool. So let's talk through the evaluation scores. There are 3 scores available through the tool. There's a classic PDRI score, which works just like the PDRI has worked for over 20 years. Lower score means a better result. There's the FEED maturity evaluation, which works on a 0 to 100 score and is focused on looking at specifically the engineering deliverables as part of the front-end planning. So higher score means a better result. And then there's the accuracy evaluation, which works on the same 0 to 100 scoring system with a higher score, meaning a more accurate project. So as far as when you use these different evaluations, like we keep saying this whole presentation, it comes down to a matter of choice. Different teams and different situations will call for using the tool in different ways. I'm just going to talk through a couple examples of when I found the most value in using these evaluations. So with the accuracy evaluation, since the accuracy evaluation is looking at understanding the team dynamic and the environment that they're in, I find it most helpful to do that early in the process. So on a large project, that's probably early in FEP2. On a smaller project, that's probably early in FEP3. It's when the work is really starting to ramp up. The reason I like to do it early is because if there's a problem with your team dynamic or with the environment, it's much easier to make those changes early on, and it gets harder as the project moves along to make some of those changes. So with the FEED maturity and the PDRI score, in my projects, I like to do these as a combined evaluation. So we'll do a full PDRI, which produces the FEED maturity as a subset score. And why does that matter? Well, as an owner organization, it's very common for us to rely on outside third-party contractors to help us develop our front-end plan. We simply do not have the resources internally to do it on all of our projects. By having both scores, you can not only see if you have a problem, but you get an idea of where you should focus your effort to try and improve that score. So for example, if you get an unacceptable PDRI score and you get an acceptable FEED maturity score, you know your problem is not with your third-party contractor that's produced all those engineering deliverables. The problem lies with the owner's organization, and you need to work internally to get your team ready for that project. Now, for those of you who work for some of those third-party engineering companies, you could probably appreciate how valuable this tool would be in having that conversation with your owner client where they need to do some things to prepare for their project, and this will help them see that. So as I mentioned, we had the chance to beta test this tool across multiple organizations and a variety of different projects, and we've compiled a little list of lessons learned on the project that we thought would be helpful for groups that are trying to implement the tool. So the first of these, which is probably the most important, is that using the tool made a difference. Every project that used it was able to find areas to improve their project and to make a difference. The second is on the timing. So all the folks who used the tool found that using this new tool reduced the amount of time it took to do the PDRI evaluation because the definitions are there, and a lot of the time goes into people trying to agree on what the score is. So having it clearly defined removed that obstacle and reduced the time. Now, if you do the accuracy evaluation and the PDRI at the same time, it will probably take you a little bit longer than historically it took to just do a classic PDRI, but the time is well worth it, as I'll explain here in a second. On the international teams that use this tool, they noticed an even more distinct amount of time saved because they were able to break that language barrier quickly by having everything written and defined. So very helpful on international projects. And then the last common thread that we heard across the board was that the multiple scores really did help in allowing the organization to know where to focus their effort. So we've heard a lot about change in yesterday's keynote speakers, and today's keynote speakers. It's a common topic, and we can probably all agree that change is very hard and it's not fun. And so the question with any new tool always becomes why? Why are we going to go through the pain of adopting this new tool? So let me try and answer the why question with a little bit of a story. And I'm going to borrow heavily from Charles Dickens' classic, A Tale of Two Cities. But I'm not going to talk about cities. I'm going to talk about projects. It's funny, when you read the opening line there, it seems like Mr. Dickens had a little bit of project background, because the best of times and the worst of times sounds like my projects. So I'm going to talk through two examples, and in both these examples, the names have been changed to protect the innocent and the guilty. So Project A was a high-priority, schedule-driven project. It was being done to meet a compliance deadline. We had to take a single facility and separate it into two independent facilities, separate utilities, separate means of access, etc. It was clear across the organization that we had to do this project. There was good alignment. In order to make sure we were ready to execute this project, we did a PDRI evaluation, classic PDRI, and we did an accuracy evaluation. This was done using an outside facilitator plus the project team. Both of those evaluations raised some flags. We had an unacceptable PDRI score, and we had an unacceptable accuracy score. Left us a little concerned. The second example, Project B, was also a high-priority, schedule-driven project, but rather than a compliance driver, this one was being driven by the business team. They had a new product that they felt could drive substantial growth within the organization, and they had a very tight window to get that product developed. So we were putting in a new production line to make this product. Again, high level of alignment across the organization. Everybody knew this project had to be done and had to be done quickly. So in order to make sure we were ready to execute, we paid a hefty sum of money to an outside independent firm to come in and do an evaluation on our project deliverables and make sure we were ready. We were, of course, thrilled that they gave us an excellent level of preparation, so they felt we were ready to go. Now, fast forward, and let's talk about the results. So let's start with Project A. Project A had concerns because we had an unacceptable PDRI score and we had an unacceptable accuracy score. So what did we do? We stopped. We went back and did additional engineering. We changed the team dynamic. We added members to the team. We added management reviews. In all cases, we did everything we could to address the concerns that we saw. And as a result, that project went very smoothly. We finished months ahead of schedule. We finished 15% under budget. So this goes back to what Mr. Dickens was saying. This was the spring of hope and the season of light. This was the best of times. Now, Project B. Project B, we felt like we were very prepared. We got an excellent score. And so we charged right into the project. When Project B was being executed, we didn't have an accuracy evaluation, so we didn't do one. So although we had, and I truly think that the plan was well developed, we didn't understand weaknesses in our team. We didn't understand problems in the environment. So that good plan went into a rough environment. And as a result, this project, which was a rush-to-market project where we had 13 months to execute, we finished 9 months behind schedule. And as icing on the despair cake, we finished 10% over budget as well. So I'm not sure how many of you have made it to the end of A Tale of Two Cities, so there's a quick spoiler alert here. The book ends with the guillotine and heads rolling in the street. Project B has very much the same ending. So there's a couple key takeaways here. One, the time that you put into evaluating your project makes a difference. If you can find those problems before they impact your results, you'll be glad you did it. And two, both maturity and accuracy can make or break your project, and you have to understand both. I'm going to pass it back to Ed for some closing comments.
Yes, thanks, Eric. That sounds pretty brutal in terms of what happened to his people at Georgia Pacific. I didn't know you did capital punishment there in Georgia for projects. Unfortunately, that happens in a lot of projects, right? We end up in a situation where we have poor front-end preparation, and then people's careers are affected by what happens. Many times it's people that weren't even involved, and they just are the recipients of bad planning. So let's talk a little bit about this. We get back to this word choice. The choice is, do we get to maturity and accuracy or not? If we're running the race, do we decide to use mature, well-trained at the top of their game, athletes in a good environment to compete? Or do we just put what we have on the track and hope that it goes well? And I think that's really what we're talking about here with the use of the new PDRI Matters tool. Do we use that to understand where we are? Do we put our teams in an environment where they're going to have the ability, although challenging, to get to an accurate result? Or do we put them in an environment where they're just going to try to survive? And many of them are going to flee. We see that happening. We know that our choices have consequences. Just as in life, our projects have consequences. And so when we look at the potential consequences of where we might be, you'll see that here. Do we really want to be in low maturity, low accuracy, or do we want to be in a good place on our projects? What is that, the era of light? That's right. All right, so that's the end of our presentation. We have a few minutes for Q&A. Dr. Munir Al-Asmar is going to come up and facilitate the Q&A, and Eric and I will do the best we can to answer those questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. Great presentation. We do have a dozen questions or so on the app, so I think we have 4.5 minutes here to go through a few of them.
Yep.
The first one is, does this version 5.0 supersede the previous PDRI?
Yes, it does. Actually, the tool is on the CII website for download now, and we're going to sunset the previous tool. I think that what you'll find is that if you've used version 4.0, this one is going to give you more capabilities, and I think it's very easy just to move into the new regime or so.
Thank you. A related question. I've been using PDRI for years. How easy is it to move to this improved version?
Yeah, I kind of answered that, and I don't know if you want to talk about it as well, Eric.
I might add my 2 cents. I mean, so certainly any change, there's always hiccups, but again, the feel of the tool, the look of the tool, the questions, the format is very, very familiar to what you've been doing in PDR 4.0. In fact, we intentionally went out and got members who had worked on that original team to make sure that our tool had a consistent feel and approach.
And I'll throw in a little bit. One of the things that's happened in the last couple of years, I've had opportunity to help about 4 CII members actually facilitate capital projects. I think about 5 projects worth about $8.5 billion. And it was pretty easy just to transition into this and use it as it is. In one case, as Eric said earlier, one of the things, we had an international project, and it really helped because everything was written down, and it made it a lot easier to do. So I think you're going to find a lot of value add in what we've done.
That's a great segue. You mentioned facilitating. One of the questions is, do you still need a facilitator?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, certainly we're doing some of the work of the facilitator by putting in all of those use cases, so definition level 2, 3, 4, which is really nice because it builds in a lot of knowledge. But I still think you need to have an outside facilitator there to actually run the process and help the team have an introspective look at itself.
Yeah, I'll just add a quick comment to that. So I do think when you're doing the final evaluation, having an independent facilitator is pretty important. One of the areas that we're finding value in this tool is that because everything is defined, the project team in the process of developing the plan can look at those definitions and get a point of view on what they need to do and where they're trying to get. So they can sort of be doing evaluation on the fly, which is pretty accurate and pretty helpful. But when it comes time to the final evaluation, I agree that a facilitator should be brought in for that final.
Fantastic. A little bit of a different question here, and I know you've talked about it a little bit throughout the both parts of the presentation. How would you summarize the key differences between the classic PDRIs and this improved version 5?
Yeah, I'll go first. Classic PDRI, again, around since about '96. This version, number 1, gives you a more objective way of determining, is it a definition level 3, 4, 2, and so on. It adds that extra dimension on accuracy, and we really have a pretty neat spreadsheet that allows you to do a lot of different kinds of evaluations. As Eric said, when you do a full PDRI assessment, then you get the FEED assessment, and FEED maturity assessment is a subset of that automatically. But if you want to, you can just look at FEED, or you can just look at accuracy. So it really is a different tool.
Okay, there's a question related to my previous question about facilitating. It just came in. It says, how valuable is it actually, do facilitators have to get recertified? Is the real piece of that question.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, facilitators can do a facilitation without being certified or, you know, with little background. You know, we do certification training. We've never done recertification. Generally what happens is, from my perspective, as a facilitator, it's a lot more important to understand how the tool works and who the people are you're working on. You're working the meeting, you're not working to find the definition. So what you're doing is you're helping people, as part of that process, understand what they probably know, but maybe they aren't speaking about, and you're trying to help with conflicts within the team. So, you know, if you've got facilitation background, it's really important to understand how that works within the context of PDRI.
Fantastic. We do have another 5 or so seconds. There's 4 questions that really point to the same thing. I'm going to read one of them. It says, nice work. Is there a plan to add this functionality to the remaining PDRI tools suite?
That's really up to the CI members and the CI leadership.
Sounds good. That's a great one. All right, so let's...
Going to go to the...
Noé, would you like me to invite to the break, or are you going to do that?
Say a couple things.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Before we do that, I just want to invite everybody. Next door, we do have a booth, and you can test drive the tool for yourself if you would like. We're going to be there for the next couple hours. Thank you very much.